You know how they say your wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of your life? Well, mine almost wasn't. Not because of bad planning, not because of cold feet, and not even because of family drama. No, my biggest problem came from the last place I expected, my neighbors. And when I tell you they tried to sabotage the entire day by banning my wedding guests, I mean, they really thought they had the power to ruin everything. But what they didn't expect was that I wasn't going to back down. They underestimated just how far I'd go to protect my happiness, and that's how I ended up renting the entire street for my wedding day, just to put them in their place. When I got engaged, I was over the moon. My partner and I had been together for years, and we'd always talked about having a wedding that felt personal, warm, and close to home. We didn't want a stuffy ballroom or some overpriced venue that forced you into cookie-cutter packages. Instead, we wanted the comfort of celebrating right where our story began, on our own street, surrounded by the people who had watched us grow. To me, it wasn't just about the vows. It was about filling the neighborhood with love, music, and laughter. But apparently, not everyone thought that was a beautiful idea. From the moment the first save-the-date envelopes hit the mailbox, the complaints started trickling in. My next-door neighbors, Mark and Linda, were the worst. They weren't the friendly type to begin with. You know the kind, always peeking through their blinds, ready to pounce on the smallest noise, the type who sigh dramatically if your trash bins are out an hour too long. Yeah, those neighbors. So, when they caught wind that I was planning to host part of my wedding celebration at home, it was like giving them a new hobby, making my life miserable. At first, it was subtle. Comments like, "So, how late do you think this event is going to go?" with that fake smile that hides pure annoyance. Or, "Parking is already bad enough around here on a regular day. Can you imagine when you bring in 50 extra cars?" I brushed it off, thinking maybe they'd just complain for the sake of complaining. But soon, it escalated. One day, Linda cornered me outside while I was unloading groceries. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her words cut sharp. "You know, a real wedding happens in a proper venue, not on a street where people actually live." I remember gripping the grocery bag so tightly that the plastic handles dug into my fingers. My heart was pounding in my ears, but I forced a smile and said, "Well, this is what we want. We'll make sure everything's handled properly." Inside, though, I was fuming. Why did she think she had the right to dictate how I celebrated the most important day of my life? Things only got worse from there. A couple of weeks before the wedding, I came home to a letter taped to my door. At first, I thought it might be from a guest or a delivery. But no. When I opened it, my jaw dropped. It was a notice from the city, informing me that multiple complaints had been filed against the anticipated event at my address. Noise concerns, parking restrictions, and even safety hazards were listed. Someone had actually gone through the effort of contacting local authorities to try to block my wedding. I knew immediately who was behind it. Mark and Linda. No one else on the street had ever had an issue with me before. They were the only ones petty enough to go this far. My hands were trembling as I read the notice. For a moment, I felt helpless, like maybe my wedding was really about to be derailed because of them. But then, something inside me snapped. No. This was my day. My family and friends had booked flights, bought dresses and suits, taken time off work, all for this. There was no way I was going to let two bitter neighbors destroy everything. That night, as I tossed and turned in bed, I kept replaying every smug look, every condescending remark. My chest felt tight with rage, and then, somewhere between anger and determination, the idea came to me. If they didn't want my guests on the street, then I'd make sure the whole street belonged to us. Not figuratively, literally. The next morning, I was on the phone with the city. I explained the situation, asked about permits, and after several calls, I discovered it was actually possible to reserve public streets for private events. It wasn't cheap, and it definitely wasn't easy, but it was possible. And in that moment, cost didn't matter to me. Peace of mind mattered. Dignity mattered. The thought of watching Mark and Linda faces when they realized they had no control over me, that was priceless. So I filed the paperwork, signed the permits, and just like that, our entire street was reserved for the wedding. Parking? Taken care of? Noise complaints? Invalid. My guests? Treated like VIPs. The best part? The permits had to be publicly posted, which meant Mark and Linda got to see, in black and white, that the street they thought they controlled was officially mine for the day. When the wedding day finally arrived, the transformation was magical. The street was lined with cars filled with excited guests, laughter spilling out as they stepped onto the pavement that was now ours. We had music, flowers, and even twinkling lights strung between the houses. As I looked around, it felt like a dream. But the cherry on top was watching Mark and Linda. They stood on their porch, arms crossed so tight their knuckles went white, staring as if they couldn't believe this was happening. Every car that pulled up, every guest that greeted me with hugs and smiles, was like another nail in the coffin of their failed attempt to control me. I'll never forget the moment I started walking down the aisle we set up across the street. My guests stood, their faces glowing with joy, and out of the corner of my eye I caught sight of Mark shaking his head, muttering something under his breath while Linda practically vibrated with frustration. And I can't lie, knowing they had to sit there and watch as my happiness unfolded right in front of them, that felt like the sweetest revenge of all. By the end of the night, the street echoed with music, laughter, and celebration. My neighbors' angry glares had long since faded into the background, drowned out by the sound of love and joy, and when the last song ended and I looked around at the people I loved most, I realized something important. Revenge isn't always about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about refusing to let them destroy you. So yeah, my neighbors tried to ban my guests. Instead, I rented the entire street and threw the happiest, loudest, most unforgettable wedding they could never stop. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing.